Welcome back to the AM show. Time for us to review what the papers are reporting this morning. And this segment is brought to us by courtesy of Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. We're offering free prostate screening and free female fertility screening locations. We're doing that in Accra, or Spintex opposite Shell signboard, in Kumasi, Kronom, Abuehia behind Angel Educational Complex. In Takrade, we are at the Anaji Estate, Tema Community 22, Techiman Hanswa, Siama, in the Nzima area. You can give us a call on 0244 86 70 68 or 0274 23 43 21. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic diseases. Do your best to pass by so that we can ensure that you are good. Now, we're being joined by Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante, who is a political scientist and the director of Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana. Doc, I'm grateful. Good morning to you. I hope you're well.
Good morning, my brother. I'm very well.
Great. I have the Daily Guide newspaper. I have the Finder newspaper today, the New Crusading Guide, the Daily Statesman, the Custodian, and the Daily Publisher, the Ghanaian publisher, really. Let's start off with the Daily Guide newspaper. On the front page, hand over car court orders side chick. Okay, so that's a story of the popular story of the side chick, Bruhaha, that came up some time ago this year. OSP probes Mahama over 14 million cedis delegates bribe, and the bribe is in inverted commas. GHS girl electrocuted. Otunfo with this, so Otunfo chases stolen Asante regalia in the UK. Let's start off with a story on page 3 of this paper. It says, former President John Dramani Mahama is under investigation by the Special Prosecutor's Office over allegations of bribery. According to a report, Mr. Mahama paid over 14,203,680 to 355,092 delegates of the National Democratic Congress in the party's recently held primaries. The money, which was given under the guise of transportation, has been deemed as an inducement and classified as a bribe by the Special Prosecutor due to Mr. Mahama's contest for the flag bearership position. The Special Prosecutor's Office considers that the money was given to influence voters in favor of Mr. Mahama, who was competing for the party's flag bearership position with 2 others. But Dr. Kwabena Dufour later withdrew from the race, leaving the contest to Kojo Bonsu and Mr. Mahama. A statement issued by Mr. Mahama's campaign team confirmed that they provided some delegates with transportation and assured that the support was not a replacement, but intended to augment what the party is providing to all constituencies. So this is what happened on the D-Day. We were told and we reported that all delegates were given 40 cedis each, and that was coming from former President John Dramani Mahama as a way of appreciating them coming and giving them transportation. Really, it was classified as TNT. What do you make of this happening and the dimension the OSP is taking this to?
Yeah, I think thanks for the opportunity. But before I begin, our usual comment on 1 or 2, if I have any.
Sure.
Let me chip in that one before I come into this. If you look at, I want to touch on the issue of one of the K2 constituencies where Agbana was supposed to have won.
Edem
and
Agbana,
later
yes.
there was a recount and the rest of them.
After the recount, there was they tied according to the EC. But yesterday, the party's functional executive committee declared Agbana as winner of that particular primary.
Yes, and that is where I'm coming from. If you look at what transpired, they saw some anomalies regarding the stamp that ought to be on the ballots. And when they did the account, they realized that the contestants, all of them, had some ballots without stamp. And it is always after the counting that they realized that there was a tie, and then the functional executive took the decision to break the tie. This brings to sharp focus the issue of why would somebody atone for the sins of others or somebody who was supposed to deliver his duty. Is it the case that it was Agbana who was supposed to stamp the ballot? No. Whoever's duty it was, there was a negligence on that. So I believe that going forward, there should be a way of handling it. I know the court has ruled on this, but it can also be something that will create problem if we don't look at it well. Somebody can deliberately, not stamp it and then deny you the opportunity to be a winner of the contest. And then he may be punished for his offense, but has denied you something dear to your heart. I don't know how we want to resolve it, but I like the way the NDC took a decision to deal with it head on. I think going forward, we should be very critical. We should look at the process again and see who will be responsible for what, and should it affect the candidate who is supposed to be the winner of the election. It's something that we have to look at, because as we're going to 2024, who knows? It may pop up. And how do we resolve it? And that one, will it be resolved by any party or, the courts?
Obviously, that will be resolved by the courts. Yesterday, I was asking the party why they took that position when they should have allowed it to the law court. And they said, in this particular primary, the EC organized it on behalf of the party, and therefore the party could take that decision. But in future, if it happens in the general election, the court has to do that. But again, for the party to have done that, is it not opening up ways for this to take a new dimension in the near future if this should happen again?
I don't see it coming up because, you see, the NDC could have organized the election itself without the support of the EC, because no law makes it mandatory for the EC to come in. It's only the executive election. So if it had happened that way, the NDC could have taken that decision. Yes, it tells you that this type of election, it is the party that owns it. So at the end of the day, whenever there is a problem, I think it is fair and proper for them to take a final decision to resolve it. But we are saying that let's look at it globally and see how we can deal with it so as to prevent such occurrence in the national election. Because as you know, in national elections, tempers are high, stakes are high, and the rest of them. And then somebody can deliberately do this. If there is this problem, how do we deal with it? So do we need to double check before we start the process, or what? I think a solution must be found to this so as to avoid a situation such as we have seen at the national level. Now I'm back to the alleged bribe that has been given to voters by former president through the story that we have read. It is a difficult one because if you look at the political parties, they will tell you they give TNT to their supporters, and it's all the parties. It's not only the NDC or whichever part. All the parties, they do. They give TNT, they give T-shirts, and they give all those things. If you want to see them as what, a means of inducement, then you realize that the definition has to be widened to even include T-shirts, include any other thing that could be beneficial and all that. So I am happy that these things have come up, and then the state is trying to look at it. The solution to it will be a learning curve for all of us, because we have seen certain practices that have found their way or expression into the electoral plane, and posing a whole lot of problem. I believe that at the end of OSP's work, we will know how to go about these things so that we deal with some of these problems once and for all.
In terms of trying to sanitize the political landscape, how do you expect this to progress so that we can get a desired end result where some of these things will be out of our elections? Because people are becoming worried about how we are monetizing elections in this country.
Monetizing election is not a good thing at all. It's part of the corrupt system that you and I work against. But we have to find a way of dealing with it. And one sure way is to what? Encourage state funding of political parties. As soon as the state comes in and these things are handled at the level of the state, some of these problems will eventually be a thing of the past. We should, whilst waiting for that day to come, we should also engage or continue to engage our people, and I'm talking about political party supporters and the whole country at large, about importance of advocacy to the direction that there's no point trying to be induced by any means, because the short meaning is that you have, as soon as you accept any form of inducement, you have compromised or shortchanged yourself for the next 4 years or some few years to come. And why do you want to do that? So when people get the message clear, then our attitude towards some of these things will change. We should make it a conscious effort. The political parties must do that. And then NCC must take it upon itself and then continue to drum it the ears of everybody, so as to know the relevance of what? Voting on your conscience, voting based on messages and then manifesto and the rest of them, and avoiding what? Inducement, which will shortchange you at the end of the day.
Shouldn't this also then spark the whole discussion about political party financing, such that the state, once it finances political parties, we can then demand what these monies are used for? Such as, for example, in this case, we could have then asked, okay, so what is the source of this over 14 million cedis that was spent on paying for TNT for this delegate?
Yeah, that's what I said earlier, that there are two solutions. One is what? The political party financing. It is a discussion that we always touch and leave. But I think from look of things and the way things are unfolding, it is important that we bring it to the fore and look at it carefully and then discuss it with the view of what? Making sure that our findings will be implemented, and at the end of the day, the state will fund political parties. If we don't do this, these problems will continue to haunt us, and the political actors who are beneficiaries of these processes will always shy away from these things, and they will come to haunt us anytime we are going for election. We are growing as a democracy. So some of these things that tend to undermine the democratic process, we should find ways of dealing with them head on.
Must it be the duty of the contestant or the political party to ensure that delegates are able to move from their homes to voting centers to cast their vote?
It is not the duty of any political party. No. Okay. You are going to express yourself in voting by exercising your right, your franchise. If you are exercising your right, who should pay for you? I mean, nobody pays for you to exercise your right. No. But the political parties have taken undue advantage of the poverty situation and other challenges that people have to bring in this type of idea, and then they've been defending and applying it all day long. That is how I see it. But as I've said already, the only way out is that we should begin the conversation about political party financing, where we bring on board some of these lingering challenges and see how the state can deal with it, so that nobody comes into this area with that type of problem. We are even talking about TNT. T-shirt, is another thing. Even if a T-shirt costs about 50 or 100 Ghana, you can imagine when they give it out to people at campaign grounds and all that. Food and all that. These are all, if you are talking about inducement, it can be anything. It can be material, it can be monetary, it can be whatever. So if we open up the conversation about political party financing, some of these things will be brought on board and look at it critically so that we can find lasting solution to them. Yeah.
Okay. Now, another news in the Daily Guide, which of course we're going to deal with this morning on the show, is that transport fares will go down by 10%. The transport fares have been reduced by 10% effective today, May 17, 2023, following the recent downward trend of petroleum prices. Road transport operators announced a reduction in a release jointly signed by Emmanuel Ohene Yeboah, General Secretary of Ghana Road Transport Coordination Council, and Godfred Abul-Bere, General Secretary of Ghana Private Road Transport Union, JPRTU. The new fares will apply to shared taxis, intracity buses, popularly called Trotro, intercity, that is long-distance buses, and haulage vehicles. The release stated that the reduction was in line with the administrative arrangement on public transport fares and was a response to the observed reductions in the price of petroleum product over the period. It urged all commercial transport operators to comply with the new fares and post them at their loading terminals. Now, when this story broke, we've heard some drivers also say that, well, this would have an adverse impact on their businesses. What must we do as a country to ensure that, transport fares and fuel price reductions and increases quite go directly such that when there's a reduction, then we'll have automatic reduction in transport fares, but not to be determined by organizations so that drivers can say that, well, we won't agree or will agree?
It's a difficult one. I think the economists have the way out. But as a layman, I believe that the stakeholders should sit and then discuss this thing. Then they will find a way out to this problem. Because somebody like me, when I look at all these things, then I ask myself, are we in a command economy or a capitalist economy? And if you are in a command economy, such arrangement is easy to do. But when you are in a capitalist economy where these things are guided, demand or your ability to consume a commodity or a service is demanded by your purchasing power, then the narrative changes. So I believe that the stakeholders must get their acts together, sit, dialogue, and then find something that is meaningful for these problems to end. Otherwise, we are going to have these problems with us for a very long time because of the economic system that we have, that the laissez-faire system, that is, we are allowed to do what we are supposed to do, provided we do it within the framework of the law. And that for a free market system, this type of thing is difficult to handle. But as I said, I'm a layman, the economist, the stakeholders, they know what to do. But mine is that I look at it from a political economy perspective.
But so as a consumer, when you hear drivers say that, well, price of spare parts are still going up, and therefore, even though there's a reduction in fuel, we cannot reduce our fares. How does that come across to you? And how do we solve that particular issue of drivers using other, factors to determine whether we reduce or not?
That is a difficult one because even if they don't mention spare parts, they will mention other things that they use to make their business, sustain. So some of these technicalities, I believe the stakeholders are the best people to handle it. They know how to navigate their way around them. Because if you leave it to the parties that are in who want to lose, they will bring a reason why so. When even prices are even down in terms of spare parts and other things, they will find a way of pushing the price to the consumer through another means. And then that is why I say that the stakeholders have what it takes to be able to look at it carefully, plan it, discuss, and agree on something meaningful for society.
Okay. Now, let's turn our attention to the Finder newspaper. On the front page, it says, Airport Company locks out GRA task force. Dr. Akoto pays homage to late SG Anto. GIHOC staff issue 3-day ultimatum for management to address their concerns. Say 300 million cedis debt has crippled the company. Nigerian jailed 8 years for impersonating ex-CID boss to defraud people. Court convict man of defrauding missile energy of 27.9 million cedis. Now, let's start from Gihok, because it says workers of Gihok Industries Company Limited have given management 6 major concerns within 3 working days or face their wrath. They also want Maxwell Kofi Juma, managing director of the company, to stay away to enable the interim management committee to continue with its work without any interference. According to the workers, the fortunes of Gihok distilleries have taken a downturn for the worse under the leadership of Juma, who has been the MD of the company for 6 years now. Painting the dire state of the company, the workers said that during a deba at Gihok premises on May 4th, 2023, a Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry, Michael Atrebefi, announced that the company's debt amount to 300 million cedis. They claim that Ghana Revenue Authority and other suppliers are on the neck of Gihok and even want to lock the company over unpaid obligations. Despite heavy police presence, the workers, clad in red armband, embarked on a protest at the premises of the company and vented out their frustrations. Per document cited by the finder, the workers expressed satisfaction with the actions of the IMC and which they are happy and hopeful about and don't want anybody's interference. The MD was there. We are told he went on a sick leave. An IMC body was put in place, and according to the company, they are happy with the IMC for its work and want the MD out. How do we go around this debacle? There is an MD who went on sick leave. Now the company, the worker says, we don't want him. We want the IMC to rather continue.
But there's always a way out. What's the way out? Industrial arrest is not new to the labor market. It's not. That anytime such issues come up, the two parties, that is employees and employers, they meet and then they try to resolve issues. When things become difficult and they are not able to settle issues, they end up in labor commission finally. So I believe that this issue, tempers should come down and then let management organize a meeting with the agitators, which are the employees. If they are not able to find solution, they must head towards the National Labour Commission for final solution, because that's why the Labour Commission was established, to deal with all labor issues. And if there's a need to move further to the courts, from Labour Commission, they'll be able to see their way clear. I don't think it's a problem that cannot be solved. It can be solved. They have to use the processes, the norms, the procedures, and the rest of them. Once they do these things, I think they should have a lasting solution.
To hear that a company like Gihok is owing 300 million cedis, and this is a story that is not peculiar to Gihok, but to most state entities. How do we go around this particular trouble of state entities being engulfed in a lot of debt, not being able to settle them? How do we really deal with that?
One, our solution is that you ask yourself, do we have boards that regulate these parastatals? Yes, we have them. And that is why the boards are constituted, so that they look at the performance of the organization and see the way forward. So I don't see why you have a board and that the board oversees all these things, and yet the company is wallowing in debt. It means that the board, there's a problem that they need to fix, and fix in no time. So the board must look at this and deal with it. Two, we must also ensure that there is prudence in the way we handle resources in organization. Some organizations have the power to borrow and then use it to run the organization. But do they do it along the lines of the rule of law? Do they also make sure that there is prudence in whatever they do? That is where the difficulty is. And the problem comes back to the board. Is the board supervising those who are managers of the organization well? What type of report do they give them from time to time? All these things must be addressed by the board. Once the board is able to sit well and function properly, these problems should not occur. If you are a manager and you are mishandling the resources of the organization, you have the penchant of what? Borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. The board will recommend your removal by the appointing authority. And it's so simple. So if the board will work the way they ought to be, these things will cease to what exist.
Well, you've spoken about the board's role. According to the workers, they are owed in salaries from September 2022 to April 2023. Why do this happen when the company is always producing? Why aren't we able to satisfy some of these, core responsibilities of these companies? Because you need to ensure that your workers are paid at the end of the month. You've tackled the issue of the board, but how do we really deal with this issue such that we don't have to be blaming boards, for the company's inability to satisfy, for example, payment of staff salaries?
I will blame the board. Why do we set up boards? They oversee all these things. That is what the CEO, whose duty is to run the day-to-day affair of the organization, and he reports to the board. And how does he get to the board? Does he tell the board that, yes, I've not been able to pay salary? And they say, oh, that's okay, go ahead. Anytime you have money, come and pay them. Then what is the board doing? The board must cease to exist, right? It is for these reasons and others that we appoint a board so that it will oversee all these things. The organization is producing, is it not? It is. By the accounts that we are having now, the organization is producing. So the returns from what? Their work, where does it go? And how do you balance it? And these are a function of what? Management. So if you are mismanaging the organization, this is the type of results that you have. If you are not able to do this, and I'm afraid whoever is the CEO must what? Be shown the way out. And if the board will not also be active, and I'm afraid the board must be dissolved so that we can have a board that will oversee its activities and make sure that workers who deliver get salary according to what? The work that they do. And then you stay afloat and produce. Otherwise, then the board should cease to exist. I believe that the problem must be placed at the doorstep of the CEO and the board. Nothing more, nothing less. Because you are not going to ask the president, who is an appointing authority, to come and then ensure that you are solvent and all that. Then why do you create a board? I mean, it is the duty of the board. And then the board also supervises the chief executive to deliver on the basis of what? Their vision, their plan, and the rest of them. Other than that, then these two entities, that is the CEO and the board, they must be able to what? Tell us something meaningful.
All right, let's turn our attention to the Ghanaian Publisher. On the front page, it says, beware of Mahama, MPP warns Ghanaians. Galamsey fight, AG speaks out. Renaissance Oil MD convicted of 27.9 million cedis fraud. Government to implement natural resources dialogue recommendations, according to Samuel Abu-Janapo. And he also has the story of Dr. Efree paying homage to SG Anto. Now, let's start with the MPP warning Ghanaians to beware of Mahama. It says the governing MPP has repeated its position on the newly elected flag bearer of the opposition National Democratic Congress, NDC, John Dramani Mahama, saying he cannot be trusted to carry through his promises should he be re-elected in the 2024 elections. According to the MPP, Mr. Mahama's victory speech delivered after the NDC's presidential and parliamentary primaries was unconvincing and an attempt to whitewash his underperformance during his tenure in government. Director of Communications for the MPP, Richard Anhiagba, noted, quote, everything the former president said on Monday cannot be trusted. Nobody will be able to hang their hat on it, because if you measure his performance in the past and what he's saying, you ask the simple question, why didn't he do these things the first time? End quote. Anhiagba stated while speaking on Joy News' AM show on Tuesday. I mean, this is the normal political game, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's interesting. It's coming from the director of communication, my good friend Richard. He couldn't have said it differently, given the position he occupied, so you can understand. But for me, where I sit, if you want to look at what Mr. Anyagba said, use it as a measure to measure whoever has occupied an office and want to come up for another term. And then you must also extend the conversation to the MPP that can we say that the MPP will have the moral authority to even campaign for the next election when this economy has been mismanaged, where the promise of making the city of Accra the cleanest in Africa, where all the promises that they've given to the extent that the president putting his job online against Galamsey and all these things have failed. And so is it the case that the MPP also have they have the grounds to also come up and then ask for a mandate to be renewed for them so that they can break the eight. The Hausa people say Duka Daya. They are the same in terms of this. But my feeling, strong feeling, is that whoever has occupied an office and you want to come back, you are coming back on the grounds that there are unfinished business, and it should be something that should agitate your mind, and then you come and then continue and all that. Let us also not kid ourselves into believing that people who occupy office and leave office don't leave any legacy. All regimes, I have a few minutes ago chastised the NPP, but NPP records are also there for the world to see, and so is Mr. Mahama. So if Mr. Mahama wants to come again, obviously there are certain loopholes that he himself has identified, for which reason he wants to come and plug. He is welcome, all right? The decision as to whether he will have power rests on the good people of this country, and that is why we own it to ourselves that we do a proper assessment of whoever want to, prevail upon us to give that person our mandate. We need to do proper assessment. And then once we are satisfied, we give our mandate to that person. But from where Mr. Anyagba, my good friend, is, what he is saying, I know is one of the political talks, because the two parties have also failed us woefully in certain areas, for which reason, if we should use that as a standard, the two parties should not come to us at all.
But isn't it a fair question of you are talking tough about doing ABC when you've served us before? Isn't it a fair question of saying that let's look at what you did when you were in power? Can we trust what you're telling us now?
Yeah, I'm not the one to speak for him, but he will give you answers. That is Mr. Mahama. Any question you pose, he will give. What I am also talking against the NPP, if you bring them here, they will also have answers and all that. Because you can also ask them that, do you think that the way the economy has been mishandled, the MPP also deserve any question? But the parties are the ones that will bear the brunt of answering these questions. But for me, as a student of politics, these are the things that we have seen time and again. But what we are saying that there's nothing wrong if you have governance and then there are problems. When you are coming again, come and demonstrate to us something that you are bringing new. Otherwise, we are saying that in politics, when you commit blunders, you should not come closer to politics at all. We are a human society, and that when we err and then we realize that we have erred, we should make steps to be able to address these problems and get back to society. Okay. Take it or leave it. This country is built on a two-party system. Every time, one of the two giant parties will win elections. So whether you like Mahama or you don't like Mahama, if one party is not doing well and it's NDC, which is supposed to win power, they will win. If it is MPP that is supposed to win power, they will win. What we have to do is to make sure that whatever they present to us, we scrutinize it, and then at the end of the day, force them into taking certain positions that we can hold them to account anytime their tenure of office comes to an end. That is the way to go. But to say that, look, you are going to attack these two parties and the rest of them, I'm afraid these two parties will win power all the time anyway.
Okay, interesting. Today happens to be the day the IMF board will be communicating or the IMF will be communicating the result of the board's decision on our request for some $3 billion. What's your expectation as a Ghanaian? Just to wrap it off.
I don't have any expectation.
Oh.
Why? Because this problem is self-inflicted problem. I mean, if you look at the government keep on blaming Russia, Ukraine, the issue of COVID and rest of them. But you and I know that we have had a lot of resources given to us, COVID money, Auditor General reports, the waste in the system, anti-corruption report about the fact that we lose $3 billion every year, the resources that go down the drain in the area of state-owned enterprises and the rest of them. It is lack of prudence that has brought us to this far. Yes, we'll be happy that we are going to get resources to lessen the problem we'll find ourselves. But the real question is that giving the resources we have received and mismanaged, and to the extent that now we are going to the IMF, what is the guarantee that this one will manage it well? That is something that should occupy our attention. But I know that once you bring in IMF and they give you money, they bring two things on board. One, they bring discipline, and two, they bring resources. So they are going to dictate to you and all that. We have seen their conditions, which are not anything we want to accept. But hey, now who caused up? We have caused it. So we must be prepared to endure the pain. Okay. But I believe that going forward, we as citizens should make sure that any government that will come to mismanage the economy, we throw that government out in election in no time so that we don't go to the IMF. It's a bitter place to go because of the condition that exists over there.
Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante, I'm grateful to you for joining us here on the News Review segment of the AM show. He is a political scientist and Director of Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana. This segment was brought to us by courtesy of Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. Endpoint, the end to chronic diseases. Well, let me share with you much about what Endpoint intends to do. Endpoint is running some sort of prostate screening, which is free and free female fertility screening in Accra, Spintex opposite the Shell signboard, in Kumasi, Kronoma Bohia behind Angel Educational Complex, Takrade Anaje Estate, Tema Community 22, Techiman Hanswa, and in the Nzima area, we are in Esiama. Call us on 0244-867068 or 0274-234321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic diseases. We'll take a break here. We'll be back with sports. Stay with us.